and welcome back to another episode of the Goal Line Stand podcast here. Coming to you after week 3, Monday night. We've had a chance to rewatch, digest all the games and everything. And man, there's a lot to talk about. That for some people it was a down week in the sport, but not to us it wasn't. So there's a lot to get to. Coby, how you feeling, man? I know it's you got to be feeling a little bit conflicted and confused, but you're 2-1.
We are 2-1, and Alabama has everything ahead of them. But I don't even know where to start with this one.
Oh
gosh.
So we'll just start with this. Anybody watching on YouTube, be sure to like this video and subscribe. This man's had to drag himself after Texas loss and whatever the heck that was.
Whatever that was against USL, that was.
So be sure to give a like to the video and subscribe to the channel and support him through his pain and suffering at this time right now, and maybe we can get him through. If you're listening on podcast form, be sure to leave a review. Be sure to follow us. We would greatly appreciate it. But let's dive in right now. And I guess we got to start with Alabama. This was disgusting. This was disturbing is another word I'll use for it. I have never in my life seen this from Alabama before against a team that has won 4 games in 3 years. Like South Florida, Alex Galesh may get that thing turned around. This is his first season. For anybody that doesn't know, he was the offensive coordinator at Tennessee last year under Heupel. He may get that thing going at some point. That team is not very good this year. Alabama come in as a 35-point favorite, and it was 3-3 in midway through the fourth quarter. This game, you never felt South Florida was going to win, even with the score tied, because Alabama's defense is still really good.
Yeah,
man, Tyler Buckner was really bad. Ty Simpson was not a whole lot better. But to me, the thing that might be worse is the offensive line. South Florida is they had 1 sack coming into the game. They had 5 Saturday. There are going to be a lot better defensive lines that Bama faces throughout the year, whether it's LSU. I don't even know if we put Texas A&M in there because they don't live up to it, but it's going to be a challenge. I'll obviously let you take the majority of this, but I just there's obviously a lot of questions and a lot left to be desired about this team.
Yeah, Saban definitely watched our show last week because I said you got one of 2 options here. Either you put in Jalen Milroe and you start calling plays to his skill set, or you got to make a change and you got to get a look at the other guys on the roster. And he made a change, and we got a good look at the other 2 on the roster. Granted, it is safe to say Milroe's job is not in jeopardy by any means. I think that was just a decision to be made against a lesser opponent, and you really wanted to throw your guys to the fire and see what they were made of. And we saw it. Tyler Buckner is exactly what I thought he was over the summer. Whenever I heard he transferred, I just couldn't understand why, other than Tommy Reese is there. He didn't look good at all. He did not look confident. He did not take any chances whatsoever. I mean, granted, it's USF and the score was close, but you got to be willing to make a play here and there. I mean, don't be so worried about taking a sack. Don't be so worried about throwing a pick. Make a freaking difference when you get the chance. He couldn't do it. And granted, all 5 sacks came on Ty Simpson's account. But yeah, the offensive line just didn't look good. So what is your option here? You put in a quarterback that runs a 4.3, 4.4 40, and whenever the offensive line does let loose a defender on you, you got a guy that can scramble out and make a play when he needs to. Jalen Milroe is going to be the answer for this team. However, now it is up to Tommy Reese to start calling plays. We never once saw a read option. We never once saw an RPO against Texas. We didn't really see it against Middle Tennessee. For some reason, in Tyler Buckner's first couple drives, you see the plays that were designed for Jalen Milroe. That really confused me. I think you got to not necessarily adapt. I think we got talent across the board on both sides of the ball, but you really got to put your quarterback in other words, your team in the best position to win, and that is calling plays that elevate your quarterback skill set. When you got a guy like Jalen Milroe, I mean, don't get me wrong, we saw flashes. The Texas game wasn't horrible. We saw flashes here and there of him making big plays. He can make electric plays with his feet. So now you really just got to buy in and start calling plays that really elevate his skill set. As far as the offensive line, I don't know what more you could do other than they got to get together as a unit and really start playing better. I mean, you have the talent. You have J.C. Latham. You have Seth McCaughlin. You have Caden Proctor. You have guys that have played for a while, and then you got young talent across the board. They just have to come together and play better. I don't know what more you could ask for as a coach. Like, you got the talent. You got them on the field. Now it's just up to them to play better. Defensively, granted, they weren't as anywhere near as offensively loaded as Texas. There was a couple hiccups here and there, but you did see them hold them to 3 points, and you never felt like the defense was necessarily going to break. Granted, all respect to USF. Their quarterback Brown, dude, had a phenomenal game. He was very slippery. I loved seeing that because I like seeing how Bama's defense had to adjust to it. But as for Alabama, this is essentially Blake Sims 2.0 2014 season. However, there is no Amari Cooper in this receiving core. There is no Derrick Henry or Kenyon Drake or anybody in that running back room. Roydell Williams had a good game. We saw very minimal of Jace McClellan. Very confused as to why I haven't really seen Justice Haynes yet. That's the one thing that I've been scratching my mind about, but I'm confident in Roydell and Jace. But other than that, Bama's going to have to lock it in, especially offensively. I think the defense is the stronger point of their team right now. But offensively, they're going to have to step it up and really start calling plays that are going to benefit Jalen Milroe.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, they had their explosive play rate, 3%. That is among the lowest in the country. Like, there's no, and this is not like a South Florida defensive thing like that. It's just not very good right now. And I don't know the confidence level you have heading into Ole Miss this week. I mean, the game isn't home, but if Ole Miss, I'm just curious, like, if Ole Miss gets Bama down early with some explosive plays, like, is Bama going to have enough to come back? Like, I really don't know. Like, that's a really big question. And look, Roydell Williams, he again played great, but one of my concerns for this season was the lack of playmakers at the receiver position, or the lack of like known playmakers at the receiver positions compared to years past. And now you don't have Bryce Young to bail you out, because that's been one of the problems the past 2 years is they don't have like a stud number one receiver, and it just still doesn't look like they do. So we'll see as things go on, but like there's no exaggeration.
Lane Kiffin himself just genuinely scares me. I can't stand playing him because he just always has something in his bag of tricks.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see. Now, I think there's a lot we don't know about Ole Miss's defense just quite yet, so we'll see.
Yeah.
They looked okay against Georgia Tech. Like they gave up some big plays. They gave up a lot of running yards, especially on Georgia Tech had a lot of success in the stretch plays. But we'll get to that game maybe a little bit. But yeah, it's not good. But man, I get you're 2-1 at the end of the day. Still everything in front of you.
Still got everything ahead of us. Yeah.
Just they have got to figure out how to run this offense through Milroe and be a little bit better. So we'll see what happens in Bryant.
I mean, and we've seen this before. I mean, we've seen Bama lose early in the season to Ole Miss a few years back. Like, we've seen this before, and Bama still adjust throughout the season and become successful and be dominant by the end of the season before the conference championship. So I'm still holding out hope. I still have faith in Saban. I don't think he's lost his touch necessarily. He's still got the talent on the field, but it's going to be up to the players to really come together, believe in each other, and really actually start making plays.
The only thing we haven't seen, though, is this type of game against this type of opponent. Like, generally, when Bama plays non-conference opponents, whether they're good or bad, they just boat race them. Like, you remember the USC game when they played Miami a few years ago. That game.
Now, granted, there was a game where we were very close at halftime against the Citadel, and then we still ended up beating them 53-10. But we've seen them struggle time and time again.
This felt a little different, though. I try not to overreact each week, but the more data points we get and everything, it's just more concerning. So 3:30 CBS this weekend. Everybody's going to be watching to see what they look like. But, man, somehow, some way speaking of another big favorite that kind of just floundered around, it was Colorado. And, look, all the credit in the world to them winning after that dirty hit on Travis Hunter, which that's what that was. That was garbage. And again, Shadur Sanders should get a ton of the credit here. Like he is just
Is he a Heisman front runner right now? Like
yeah.
I know you love your guy up there at Washington. I know there's still Caleb Williams. Shadur Sanders
The
is
top
making
three
his way.
candidates for Heisman right now are all in the Pac-12. Michael Penix,
Yes.
Caleb Williams, Shadur Sanders.
Yeah.
It's going to take an all-worldly effort from Shadur this weekend against Oregon without Travis Hunter, and then they have to face USC without Travis Hunter. But just sticking on this game, I still think some of my concerns about Colorado are just very apparent. Like Colorado State kind of bullied them up front, and that is not a good sign for the rest of the year. I'll say this also: in overtime, Colorado State should have gone for 2 to win that game when they scored like that. When you are the lesser talented team, you don't want to keep trading blows with somebody and see if you can outlast them. Your thing is in the game now. You have one play. I thought they should have done that. Also, why did Colorado take the ball to start overtime? Like that kind of seems like a mismanagement by Dion, doesn't it? A little bit.
No, that's Dion's mantra, and he's been doing that all season. He wants to come out the gate swinging. He wants to put your back against the wall, and he wants to get the first points on the board, even in overtime when the smarter choice would be for defense to come out first. But I think
or they turn it over. Like Colorado State just needs a field goal.
I think that's just Dion being prime and wanting to take a bold, ballsy decision and say, "Do you believe?" You know what I'm saying? Like he wanted to prove a point with that.
Yeah. That was just it would honestly, like, I like Colorado and what they've done. It would kind of been hilarious if Colorado State had won that game to a degree, because like game day, it was all Colorado, which it should have been. It was, you didn't hear anything from Colorado State, anything like that. I just thought that was just kind of a little strange to me. But
also on the flip side of it, we're 3 games in, and I'm pretty sure Colorado has already hit your over/under for the win totals on the season.
They have to get one more.
You said 4? Okay, I was thinking about that.
It was 3.5. And I picked under, and I'm going to be wrong because let me tell you, we'll get to our Pac-12 recap. Stanford is awful. Like, Stanford is really bad. They're going to boat, and Arizona State could be worse. I don't know. They got to play both of those two, so they'll easily hit the over.
Yeah,
they're going to have to find these next 2 weeks are going to be a little tough, but man, and yes, for anybody out there debating, let them storm the field. Like, who cares? Like,
yes, it's Colorado.
They won one game last year.
Yeah, that's passion for the game.
Yeah. Travis Hunter getting knocked out. It's a rivalry game. Like, people may not think of Colorado State as a rivalry. They certainly do. Like that, they don't care for each other. Like, who cares? Like, I thought that was the dumbest argument of the weekend. But
I mean, the kid from Colorado State, if they're playing somebody else, I don't think he makes that hit on Travis Hunter. But I think it is a rivalry, and you have a prime-time guy like Travis Hunter. He wanted to go make a statement. Granted, it was a poor choice on his part, but I don't think in any other game he tries to do that. But I think that's just the rivalry of Colorado and Colorado State.
I still think, like, just on an off point, I think Colorado State can probably still contend in the Mountain West. I know they've lost to Colorado, Washington State, but they're a pretty decent team. Were you a little disappointed or anything that Colorado was a 3-touchdown favorite in that game? Do you take anything away from them not covering that, or that game going to
no? Because I mean, look at it. Look at everybody else around the country. I mean, did Georgia cover their spread? Did Florida State cover their spread? I think that's just the nature of the beast in college football. Texas, that's the nature of the beast that we're in college football. I mean, granted, I think Colorado was the more talented team for sure, but I think Georgia was far more talented than South Carolina. And I definitely think Florida State was far more talented than Boston College, but it is an every given Saturday thing. I mean, you never know.
Yep. I mean, that 98-yard drive Shadur led, that was money. Like, that was just absolute money.
He's got ice in his veins.
He's
a baller.
He's QB3 to me in the NFL draft right now. I think Caleb Williams and Drake May are more impressive, and I think they're better prospects. I think Shadur's above.
Despite Colorado's flaws, I mean, we know we have their apparent flaws in the trenches. I don't think they're just as physical up front as other teams. Can you name me one flaw in Shadur Sanders' game? I mean, other than
he doesn't have the greatest arm. I don't think, like, arm strength is not his thing. He is extremely, extremely smart and accurate. Like, he knows where he's going every time, and he knows where to put it. but I don't think I don't think he has the greatest. I'm not saying it's like terrible. I don't think
No, that's not the end all be all. I mean, there's
right.
a guy whose arm strength was in question, and he's leading the NFL in passing right now because they put the right weapons around him down in Miami. So arm strength, that's not the end all be all.
Like I don't think he's out there throwing paper airplanes like Kenny Pickett or something. But like his arm strength's better than that. But man, big win for Colorado. That was probably the funnest game of the weekend.
It was a fun game to watch. Actually, I think there might be a funner game we're going to get to.
We'll get to that one, but it's not this one. I'll go ahead and say it was
not at all.
I'll start off with the Florida part of this because I think everybody's on the Tennessee. Oh, Tennessee sucks. Like I think you got to give Billy Napier in Florida a little bit.
Give his flowers, man. Give him his flowers.
I don't think any coach in the country. I might be like memory might be short here for a few weeks, but he took so much heat after that first game.
Mm-hmm.
Utah, Florida fans, everybody, offense looks terrible. You lose to a third string quarterback. Yes, it was on the road, but that Utah's backup quarterbacks behind Cam Rising are not good.
Yeah.
Florida has an identity and they know what it is and they're going to stick to it. And against a lot of the teams they play, honestly, I mean, you said it before. It can work. Yeah. Like, obviously, Graham Mertz is not who Florida fans ideally wanted as their starting quarterback this year. I don't think it's who Billy Napier wanted at, when the transfer portal opened, but it's who you had at the end of the day, and you have to build that offense around him. I was a little disappointed that first week that they weren't able to run the ball against Utah, but you're also Utah is
formidable on defense.
Defensively, that's not one of them. Like they're very formidable up front, and the running game was excellent against Tennessee. Yes, I don't know that Tennessee's defense is fantastic or anything, and I still have questions about Florida's receivers. But Florida has to drag you down a little bit. Win with their running game, win with their defense. I mean that's what it took, and the running game was great this past weekend. Like there's nothing else I can say. And you look at the schedule, and like it's kind of favorable for them a little bit. So I'm anxious to see how they respond the rest of the way. But definitely a big week for Florida. And look, I'm sorry about that. Joe Milton had a lot of misses in this game. Like there were a ton of misses in this game, and the fact that they also weren't able to run the football at all. Like this Tennessee offense just looked really rough through stretches.
It was just very underwhelming. Like it just wasn't what I thought.
Like at all. Yeah. Like it was pretty poor. So I think Florida's the big winner here, and they're ranked now and they deserve it.
I think the big winner here is the University of Georgia, because clearly the team we thought, the only team on Georgia's schedule who we thought was going to have a chance at dethroning them, they just don't look that good. Tennessee just didn't look that good. And you asked me before the show, is there a chance that we see Nico somewhere along the line? And I don't necessarily think it's that Joe Milton did that bad. I don't think Nico can go in and do much more in that game than what Joe Milton did. But I just think Tennessee, they're just not as good as they were last year. I don't think their defense is any better than it was last year. I actually think that their run defense is a lot worse than it was last year. They had a pretty good front seven in their linebacker core last year. And they definitely don't have the burners out wide and Jalen Hyatt anymore. But with that being said, I do think that Joe Milton, he has a cannon. I think he has the arm talent. But with that being said, Tennessee cannot run the ball. They do not have a defensive line. They do not have the offensive line. They just cannot run the ball, and their work in the trenches just isn't that good. Now, let's give flowers where they're due. Let's give props and credit where it's due. Florida and Billy Napier had a game plan for Tennessee. I mean, they came out, they ran the ball. Graham Mertz was the game manager that I think his skill set is. I mean, he's not a Baker Mayfield. He's not a guy that can just go out and make flashy plays. That's just not in Graham Mertz's wheelhouse. But he is a game manager. You have Trevor Etienne, Travis Etienne's little brother, and clearly this brother is a dog. I mean, he had 172 yards on the ground and averaged 7.5 per carry. Their wide receiver room just is not stacked. It's definitely nowhere near that 2020 squad they had with Kyle Trask and all them boys. But defensively, they came out and they had a plan for Tennessee, and that was to pressure Joe Milton into turning the ball over, which he did. And they also shut down the run game, which they did very effectively. So let's give props and flowers to Florida. It's rightfully deserved.
Man, that second best team in the SEC East is up for grabs right now. Like, obviously, Georgia's still at the top, but like Florida has made their argument. I think Missouri's made their argument. We'll get to them in a little
South
bit.
Carolina's performance against Georgia, I mean, it kind of impressed me for the first 3 quarters.
It did. But you also have to look at the other 2 weeks. They were not great against Furman. North Carolina, they were not great against. So I'm just we'll wait and see as the season plays out how it goes for South
Carolina will go as far as Spencer Rattler can carry them on his back.
I agree completely with you, but I think that it helped. Billy Napier helped himself so much this past weekend. Like,
yes,
he's a big winner here to me. I was never on board with the Billy Napier sucks. They need to already be thinking about getting rid of Billy Napier. Like, calm down. First off, like, just this is not a SEC championship contender or anything, but that they have a formula to win this year, and I still think I still feel the same way about them that I did in the preseason. Like, against certain teams, like, they're not going to be able to play this way against Georgia and win. Still, in my opinion, like, maybe Georgia turns the ball over a lot in that game. I don't know, because Georgia's offense looks like it's kind of sputtering a little bit right now. But we'll see. But I think against most teams they can play.
Shout out to Tyler Layfield. He did have a bold take on our show that Florida would be the worst team in the SEC. I think Florida has at least proven that they're not.
Yeah, they're not worse than Vanderbilt, who just lost to UNLV. Like,
no,
come on now. Don't let the hatred take over too much now.
I'm telling you.
All right, those were the 3 biggest games of the weekend, and we always like to hit. We're going to have so many big ones this weekend: Notre Dame, Ohio State, Ole Miss, Alabama. There's going to be a lot to get to, so we'll have more in-depth breakdowns here. But I guess let's go conference by conference here, and let's start with the ACC. There was a little bit of a lack of big games, but I think we need to talk about Florida State for a minute.
Yeah.
That game was 31-10 in the second half. Jordan Travis appeared like he got hurt near the end of the first half. He came back in the second half. They really about screwed around and found out. Like, if Jeff Hafley was a good coach, Boston College wins that game. But 18 penalties for Boston College. Also, I think it was 31-16. And instead of just kicking the extra point and keeping it a 1-possession game, it would have been 31-23, still within a touchdown and an extra point, or a touchdown 2-point conversion, tying it up. He went for 2 and didn't get it and kept it at 9 points. Like, if you don't do that, you could have tied the game up after the last touchdown they scored. And then you had a third down. Florida State doesn't get it. What does Boston College do? Commits a penalty. First down, Florida State, ball game over. Castellanos, the new QB at Boston College, he played a heck of a game. He threw for over 200-something yards. Rushed for over 100. There were a lot of mental errors by Florida State in this game, I thought, as well. Keon Coleman, I don't think he had a catch in this game, and he played all game. Like, he wasn't hurt or anything. Like, he was nowhere to be found.
I think he had 2 targets and 0 catches. Like, it wasn't a good look.
Not great. Now, you can say that they were overlooking Boston College, looking to the Clemson game, because, look, I think Florida State's a lot better than this, but and it got scary for the Seminoles on Saturday.
Yeah, I agree, and I definitely think it was just that fourth quarter. I definitely think that. But if you go back and look, if you just looked at the stats of the game, didn't even look at the score, Boston College had the ball for 7 more minutes. They had 117 more yards, had almost 100 more passing yards. They had more rushing yards, had same amount of first downs. They had less turnovers. They had more sacks, and they had more total plays. If I told you that, you would think that Boston College won that game outright. But Boston College having 18 penalties and Florida State only having 5, that saved Florida State's season. I really do. If they were to lose to an unranked Boston College, I think that would have thrown a wrench into Florida State's entire season. But they were able to pull out of it. Florida State, they went scoreless in the fourth quarter. I don't think we will see that again. But like you said, that does draw concern because you got to be able to play all 4 quarters if you're going to live up to the expectations we have for Florida State. But it's still early in the season. We're only 3 games in. I'm willing to give a little bit of benefit of the doubt here. I definitely think we'll see Florida State come out in their next game swinging. And for Boston College, does this change your outlook on Boston College at all?
No. No, that Florida State is in a position where you're going to get everybody's best shot.
Yeah.
That was Boston College. They're 1-2 now. Like, they looked awful the first 2 weeks. Even, they beat Holy Cross, but barely. Like, maybe they found something in Castellanos where they can spark the offense a little bit and get this team going. But it's not like you got Louisville this week. That's not going to be an easy game.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about them in just a second. But you want to hear just the most surprising stat out of this game? Explosive play rate. Florida State 5%, which is bad. Boston College in the 99th percentile, 17% explosive play rate. Like, that is elite explosive, and that's a warning sign to me about Florida State's defense. Well, we'll see. They got some stuff they got to clean up, but at the end of the day, just like Texas, just like Georgia, just like other teams, they won. They won. They have a massive game this weekend against Clemson, but we'll see what the Seminoles got the rest of the way. North Carolina. Impressive win against Minnesota. I look again. Minnesota is not a top 20 team or anything, but I think they're top 40-ish probably, and they have a really good defense. And this was the best game Drake Mays played all season. Like, he was really good. Nate McCollum, the Georgia Tech transfer, he was fantastic in that game as well. Minnesota's offense it stinks so bad, and I hate watching it. But I thought North Carolina they ran the ball not as successfully as they did against App State, but I thought it was good enough. They just didn't have a letdown performance. They didn't let Minnesota drag them down. It was a good win, and they got hit this weekend, who is probably somehow worse offensively.
Yeah, and I was looking at the box score on Saturday, and I saw that Drake May had 2 interceptions, and I go back and rewatch the game. He played a great game. When you throw the ball 40 times in a game, 2 interceptions really doesn't seem that bad. That's really only 2 bad throws if you think about it. But Drake May is that guy, and this North Carolina team is going to go as far as he can take them. You had a good performance by McCollum. I think that he really stood out. You love to see that. And then also, granted, Minnesota is not the most offensive-heavy team in the country, but you held them to 13 points, and you were able to double that and drop 30 on them. I think that was a very impressive game for North Carolina, to say the least.
Yep, exactly what they needed. Good performance against South Carolina. They kind of had they were in danger against App State. Some people were doubting them. And, look, they still have to prove it a little bit because, again, Minnesota is just a decent team. They're not great or anything, but they passed the test this week. So, just going around, Louisville, they raced out to a 21-0 lead against Indiana, and then you come back, it was 21-14. They won the game.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any takes on that. I'm still waiting to see a complete performance from Louisville.
I definitely think that they're building up to something. I don't think they've reached their ceiling yet for this season as a team as far as putting a productive performance in and game out. But they were able to hold them off and still be able to win 21-14. Like we said in the ACC preview, Louisville, if they can play their cards right, their schedule looks very favorable.
They get those Eagles this weekend. They get Boston College. They do have Notre Dame on the schedule, but that's obviously not a conference game. So, I guess I'll be talking more in depth about it throughout the week and recapping it. But there were some decent things to take away from Tech going Ole Miss. Obviously last year it was a complete beatdown, 42-0. It was a 7-point game in the fourth quarter at one point. I'll say this. I never really thought Tech was going to win the game. Their defense was just not getting enough stops, but their offense is still playing well when they don't shoot themselves in the foot, which they haven't really done a lot up to this point in the season. But the block kick and Ole Miss taking it back, putting them in scoring position, the drop pass on 4th down was obviously not good. They still have a lot to work on, but I do think, like, facing Louisville and Ole Miss in 2 of your first 3 games, that's a hard schedule for anybody to really go through, except for maybe like 2 or 3 teams. So, offensively, the teams I still think really good. Defensively, they've got to figure something out. Like it's bad. It's really bad. I don't know how much of that game you got to catch this weekend, but
it was a very interesting game to watch, especially I'm new to the Georgia Tech fan base, guys. Y'all just hear me out. I'm gradually building up my rapport with this team. But as I was watching the game, there was a couple good things we got to take out of it. Georgia Tech had 0 penalties and 0 turnovers. That is huge for their team. Like, I think that is great for them. Haynes King, he is that guy. I'm very, very happy that they were able to snag him out of the portal. Saw my guy Christian Leary put some work in. He had a couple good catches here and there. Offensively, this is the best this offense has looked in years. Like, this is a very fun group to watch on offense. That defense scares me, though. And I don't know what changes they can make during this season to really step it up. But this defense has to get right. If this defense can match their offense's production, this is a ball team right here, man.
Yeah. Also, true freshman Eric Singleton Jr. leading the team in receiving right now, has a touchdown in every game. Very good. Like, he caught a 51-yard bomb from Haynes King. That's a special player right there. But just finishing up the ACC real quick, we got to talk about the low points here. Pitt. All right, 2 years ago, let me paint you a picture. 2 years ago, Pitt had a Heisman finalist, a first-round pick at quarterback, won the ACC because of their offense. And if they hadn't had a stupid loss to Western Michigan early in the year, they might have made the college football playoff over Cincinnati or whoever. I'd have to remember who it was.
And not to mention they had the best receiver in the country that year.
Jordan Addison. He won the Biletnikoff Award. Pat Narduzzi doesn't want to run that style of offense anymore. Has some kind of confrontation with Mark Whipple and says he wants to go back to playing a certain style of offense. I hope it's working out for you, because Phil Dracovic is the worst starting quarterback in the Power 5 right now. I don't think it's debatable either. They are struggling to throw for over 100 yards, and West Virginia's secondary is terrible. West Virginia's front seven is okay. Like, their defense isn't awful. Their secondary is real bad, and Pitt can't do anything against it. And I don't know that they're going to a bowl game.
No.
Cincinnati just lost to Miami Ohio, beat Pitt 2 weeks ago. They were up 20 points 2 weeks ago. It's killing me, like, especially for Pitt fans and stuff, like watching your team a couple of years ago win the ACC because of your offense, and then your head coach being so stubborn. Well, we're done with that.
And where have we heard this before? This sounds a little bit of the same thing that was going on in College Station. If you think about it, I mean,
just on a much smaller scale, because the microscope
on a much smaller scale. But it is embarrassing because West Virginia is not that good. Like, if I'm being honest, West Virginia is not that good. And you mean to tell me
himself this weekend, like winning a rivalry game like that?
Like, you mean to tell me you can only scrounge up 81 passing yards? 81 against this West Virginia defense? That's not a good look. And normally when you see quarterback performances like this, oh, okay, they might have a running back that can carry the load. No, they don't have one of those either. So Pitt is in a terrible place right now. And like you said, 2-3 years ago, like, we would never have thought this about Pitt. They might end up finishing in the bottom 2 of the ACC this year.
Those comments from Narduzzi about the offenses, he kind of trashed Keaton Slovis on his way out last year. Keaton Slovis just beat Arkansas and is 3-0 at BYU.
Yeah.
Just finishing up the ACC real quick here. A team that might be lower than Pitt, Virginia Tech, got housed by Rutgers, and they're 8-point dogs to Marshall this week.
Oh God.
I'll just leave it there. We don't have to go too far in that, but
yeah, that's just not a good look.
I guess let's go to the Big Ten. I want to start with the Nittany Lions a little bit here. The passing offense sputtered a little bit. Like, this was Drew Lar's first Big Ten road game. It wasn't great. I'm still waiting. The running game is what's concerning me a little bit right now with Penn State. They have not been able to run the ball as well as I think they should.
Yeah,
and they won by 21 points. Their defense is fantastic. I think their defense is playing as good as any in the country right now. And they're obviously going to get the defense is not going to get tested this Saturday against Iowa, but we'll see what Alar's got this weekend. But I thought it was I think it's encouraging when I think a team plays a B- or a C+ game and they're winning by 3 touchdowns against not bad opponent. Like, Illinois is not terrible. I don't think they're as good as they were last year, but I thought it was fine. Did you got any big thoughts on this one? Or
it's kind of piggyback off of what you said. I mean, Drew Alar didn't complete 50% of his passes on Saturday. Nick Singleton, your superstar stud of a running back. He only had 37 yards on the ground and averaged 3 yards per carry. They didn't have a receiver over 50 yards receiving. And when you can do that and still drop 30 on somebody and still win by double digits, I think that's a good football team. It wasn't the most like efficient performance by any stretch, but when you can still go out and dominate teams and still win big, and you have a abysmal performance on the offense side of the ball, I think that just goes to show how good this team can really be. I mean, their ceiling is top of the country type stuff.
Yeah. There wasn't a lot of big games in the Big Ten this week. Maryland routed Virginia, who I know we didn't talk about the ACC. That's another that's not a good situation right now. Maryland 3-0, winning the games they should. Wisconsin kind of struggled a little bit with Georgia Southern there at the start, but they pulled away, got a win. I still feel the same way I do about Wisconsin. I thought I had them as the most overrated team in the Big Ten in our preview. They just don't look, and it's Luke Fickell's first year, but their passing attack just it's Iowa scored 41 points.
Who would have thought?
Well, the offense didn't, but the team did. We got a couple of defensive scores in there. I know we got at least one. So
yes,
shout out to Hawkeyes. Penn State Iowa this weekend is one of those under the radar games. I'm more interested just to see how Penn State plays against that defense, how the offense plays against that defense this upcoming week. But also,
can Iowa keep Penn State's offense off the field? That's what I'm really going to be looking for.
I know Penn State will keep Iowa's offense off the field. So if I was going to win this game, it's going to have to be one of those just weird games they play.
Yeah.
Look, they looked shaky the first couple of weeks, and it was Western Kentucky. I did think this was the most impressive Ohio State's looked all year.
Oh, I definitely agree with you. And it looked exactly how each of their first 3 games should have looked. Like, they looked dominant out the gates. Kyle McCord, I really think he's coming into his own as a quarterback. I mean, he was very efficiently. He almost had as many touchdowns as he had incompletions. And whenever you have a wide receiver like Marvin freaking Harrison, you should be looking like that week in and week out. I mean, the kid is a stud. Like, this kid will go top 3 in this draft, and I fully believe that.
Yeah, like – he's the best receiver prospect I can remember since forever, because like Devontae Smith is still the best college receiver I've ever seen, but prospect wise, I think you could the size thing, in the NFL like that.
Prospect wise, this is the closest thing to Calvin Johnson I think we've seen in a long time. Like, you had Julio, you had AJ, you had guys like that, but this is a different level of
and I'm glad that they're finally able to get him the ball now. Like it was a good performance. You wanted to see ahead of obviously a massive game this weekend when you head to South Bend to play Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Or you can like what do you think about Michigan right now? Like that they kind of were screwing around with Bowling Green a little bit. I feel the same way I do about Georgia's. I just feel like they don't care right now. Like I just don't. Even against South Carolina, I thought I picked Georgia to even cover the spread, which was like 27.5, because I thought, okay, Georgia will get up for this game. Like they don't want to be victimized. Like, and we'll get into them more later. But I think without Harbaugh, it just feels like they were just playing like 40% effort, and they just don't. They still can't run the ball right now.
I mean, Blake Corum had 100 yards and 2 tutties.
Yeah,
but Blake Corum.
Remember, like, okay, compared to the past couple of years when they went to the playoff, won the Big Ten, they're putting like a bajillion yards and points on these teams. They just kind of looking, all right, we gotta go out here and play Bowling Green. Let's just go get it done and then get to the house. Like, they just look like they're on cruise control till like November. Like,
and I think that's exactly how they have to play this, because they can be on cruise control. If you look at their schedule, they don't have a formidable opponent until November 11th, and that's Penn State. And if I'm being honest with you, I'll be playing this the same way. Keep it laid back. Keep your guys healthy, because those last 3 games, don't get me wrong, because Maryland doesn't look bad. You got to play Penn State, then you got to play Maryland, then you got to play Ohio State. I would ease my foot off the gas too if I was this team until then.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit in our preview. That Maryland game is the ultimate trap game right there. Even if you beat Penn State, you're obviously looking ahead to your biggest rival in the biggest game of the year, maybe in all of college football.
Yep.
Then like Mike Locksley will have that team ready. Like he's a good coach, but I don't know. Like all I'll say is, if you start slow and you screw around against the wrong team, like Georgia kind of almost found out this weekend. Like if you keep starting slow and you make mistakes and let a team get out enough ahead and kind of nurse the lead, it can be kind of bad. Other Big Ten team I wanted to shout out, and I never thought I'd say this year, is Rutgers. They're 3-0. I think this
Very
is
weird.
the best they've looked since those Big East teams that had Ray Rice and the McCourty brothers, when they were ranked and winning games. Like obviously playing in the Big East had something to do with that, but they just beat Virginia Tech by like 19 points, I think. Like their defense looks pretty good, and I just think, look, they play Michigan this weekend. That's going to change, but I just, give them credit where it's due.
I mean, think about it this way. Last year at this time, when we saw that Kansas was 3-0, we were like, oh, well, good pat on the back.
Kansas,
and then it turns out Kansas is legit. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, shout out to Rutgers. They had a running game. I think they had a kid go over 140 yards, average almost 8 yards a carry. So, shout out to them. I mean, they've won more games already than me or you thought they would. So
I just think you got to shout out those teams when they do things. Like they're not going to get a lot of public press, obviously, and obviously, our millions of followers, like they want us to shout out Rutgers and make sure that they're known. So we'll give them that. Nebraska won.
I don't know how.
We'll wrap up the Big Ten. Nebraska won. Congratulations. Let's go to the Big 12, and we'll keep with our theme of teams at the top struggling. It was 10-10 in the fourth quarter with Texas and Wyoming. Like Wyoming about did it again.
Almost.
And the thing is, I don't know that anybody watched this game because I don't know. I don't know that I even have Longhorn Network. I didn't check, but I don't know that many people saw that game. Do you think it was more of just hangover from their biggest win in years against Alabama, or the thing is, like in 2 of the 3 games this year, Texas has not looked great, but in the most important game they're going to play this year, they did. So,
yeah, I think it was just the hangover effect from the game they played last week. I mean, you went on the road to Tuscaloosa and you wore them out. You cannot just come out firing a blaze like you did last week. They came out, they still won 31-10. I mean, granted, it's kind of like how we had to look at Penn State a little bit. They had an abysmal performance on offense, but they still managed to beat a team that just had a very big win early on in the season. They still managed to beat them 31-10. So I just calling a spade. I just think that they're still basking in the glory of what they did last week, rightfully so. But this team is just talented enough to where Quinn Ewers can throw for 11 for 21, only 131 yards, and they still win 31-10.
Yeah, I mean some other wins like Oklahoma. They look great again. They haven't played anybody like that. I'm still cautious with Oklahoma. They get Cincinnati this week, who I thought would be undefeated going into this game, but lo and behold. They got beat by Miami, Ohio this past weekend. So all that goodwill they got up for those after looking good those first 2 games. Scott Satterfield spent it right there. Yeah. UCF, they're still undefeated. They haven't really played anybody. BYU, me and you called this, by the way. Me and you said BYU having a win total at 4.5 was stupid and ridiculous because they play Power 5 opponents each year. They already got 3 wins. They're 3-0. Me and you didn't say they were going to go to the Big 12 title game, but that win total just stood out to us like a sore thumb. And go check. We got receipts. We'll bring them. I'll find them and bring them out.
So.
Now it wasn't like a.
Is that more of a testament to how bad Arkansas is, or
that's exactly what I was getting to. Like, it wasn't a great performance. I think Arkansas stinks. By the way, I that's another receipt I'll pull up. Mississippi State and Arkansas. I told you how bad they were going to be.
Yes, you did.
But I just think Keaton Slovis has his limitations, but I think he's gotten unfairly just trashed a little bit, especially at Pitt running that 1975 offense they got going on over there. And then he had to deal with a lot of injuries at USC. He played a good game Saturday night. Like he did play a good game. BYU has their left tackle. I've been reading around and watching him. Like he's a legit possible first round pick. Like again, you said it. They're good on the line of scrimmage. Like BYU is almost always good on the line of scrimmage. having a win total at 4.5 was just, to me, extremely disrespectful. Like,
yeah, there is somebody in Caesars who just really wanted to make some easy money, and they said, you know what, let's make this win total 4.5.
Yeah. Kansas won. Kansas kind of concerned me a little bit this weekend. Like, they were 28-point favorites against Nevada, and Nevada's like legitimately might be the worst team in the country. And Kansas needed some stops there at the end. They could have been looking ahead because they got Kansas BYU play each other coincidentally this week. Battle of 3-0 teams, and then Kansas they make their way to Darrell K. Royal Stadium in Austin, Texas.
Yep.
That will be hilarious. Also, while me and you can pound our chest about BYU looking pretty good, me and you also compared Oklahoma State to Louisville in the way that their schedule is kind of light and they can make the run.
Brother, oh my God. When I saw this score at the end of the day, I was like, dude.
And they barely beat Central Arkansas week 1. Okay, a lot of teams screw around week 1. It's Mike Gundy. He'll be fine. They beat Arizona State, who is real bad. And then, like, they got absolutely dominated this week.
They got dog walk, dude.
Now, I will make 2 points. South Alabama is a very good group of 5. Like,
yes, they are.
I think they won 10 games last year. I know they were very good last year.
They were very successful
you
last year.
cannot lose by 26 points to South Alabama.
And you can't play 3 different quarterbacks and as a group complete under 50% of your passes. Yeah. That's not a good look. No. And then not only that, your best runner only had 31 yards on the ground. Gundy's got some issues right now. And we say this every year. Like, the year you think that Oklahoma State's going to be something, they're not. And whenever you think that they're going to be horrible, they pull out 10 wins. Me and you were both very puzzled going into this season about this team. They're proving us that there was a cause for concern.
You want to know the Echo's game of the week this week?
What?
Oklahoma State and Iowa State.
Oh, God.
Iowa State just lost Ohio, too. 10-7.
The over-under on that game might be 26 points total.
And you might be lucky to get there. That's going to be
that's going to be bad.
Not anybody with all these games on the slate this weekend that chooses to watch that, by the way.
We will be one of them for just
I will keep. We're talking.
We might be the only 2 dudes in the country that will watch this game from
that are not a part of those fan bases.
Exactly.
We'll go rapid fire. Just talking about these last 2. I told you my hot take right now that I have in college football right now. Look, I don't know how it's going to carry on through the next few weeks. Washington is the best team in the country right now, or they're playing the best. Like, what they did to Michigan State was downright mean. Like, that was – I didn't know what to do with that game before it. Like, from a betting perspective, like, just I stay away – I was going to stay away from it because you could have got an inspired Michigan State effort like you see when stuff like that happens with the Mel Tucker situation.
Yeah.
And it was in East Lansing. But it was also – I think Washington is really good. Me and you were both high on them before the season, but I don't know that we were high enough. Like, again – they haven't played a truly top tier team, but I think they've played like not a lot of teams have. Like, obviously Texas and Florida State have big wins, but Washington's look better than Georgia. Would I pick Georgia on a neutral field? Sure, but like
Washington's been more impressive. Yeah,
like they have. They've been more impressive. I think
and that receiving core we've been just astonished about. All 3 of them
were we high enough on them? Like, I don't know that we praised them enough.
Like, we put them in the top 5, if not top 3 in the country as far as like wide receiver rooms. All 3 of their guys had multiple catches, averaged at least 22 plus yards per reception. And then on top of that, let's see, just for good measure, they all almost got about 300 passing yards on their own. Like, as a collective, they're that good. And not only that, their running attack wasn't bad at all. Like, they have a run game.
In every facet of the game, Washington has been outstanding. I'll say this again: we've said they haven't played a team that can throw the ball yet. Like, Boise State can't throw the ball at all. Michigan State cannot throw the ball.
Yes,
we're gonna find out how good Washington is.
Like
But
how we've talked about Michigan just cruising through teams they should be obliterating. That's how Washington is playing football right now. They are obliterating the teams they're supposed to.
and on that note, have fun, Cal, this weekend. Have fun with that this weekend. Have fun.
It's gonna be rough.
We've already talked about Colorado. The USC was off this weekend.
Yep.
Oregon State won. They weren't as impressive as they were the first two games, but again, wins a win. Washington State, they won again. Oregon, there wasn't a lot of marquee games in the Pac-12 this weekend. I think Washington was the most notable, playing Michigan State like that.
Yeah,
we do got to talk about just briefly the two bottom teams in the conference. Arizona State got shut out 29-0 against Fresno State.
That's embarrassing.
Cruel sense of irony. Stanford hired Troy Taylor from Sacramento State, and Sacramento State just beat them. It's good. Stanford's got a long way to climb right now. But those two teams did not especially look good. Do you got any other takeaways from the Pac-12 this weekend, or anything else we need to mention?
I'm gonna be completely honest with you, and this just might be a hot take. I don't think Oregon, and granted they played Hawaii, I don't think Oregon's getting talked about enough. I mean, they pulled out a win against Texas Tech last week. They just dominated Hawaii, and clearly we know what they did to Portland State in week 1. But all the talk in the Pac-12 has been about Washington, USC, Colorado. For some reason, I just don't think Oregon's getting talked about enough. I really don't. Bo Nix looks efficient in every facet of the game.
We're talking about teams that haven't really played a lot. Like two of their games against Portland State and Hawaii. Hawaii is a bottom 5 team in the country. And in their one game against a decent team, they were down double digits in the second half. I think I'm still like with Oregon. And see, even this weekend, like with Travis Hunter out, I don't know how much I'm taking away, because they're going to own Colorado on the line of scrimmage. Now, I'm not making a prediction, but that I'm sure of. They will whoop Colorado up front. Well, I'm still just in wait and see. I'm not saying they're a bad team, but I still feel they're in the. I think they're top 15-ish. I'm not ready to put them in the top 10 or anything. They haven't done anything to impress me that much, but they're winning. That's the most important thing. All right, we got to wrap it up with a mid-conference, to say the least. The SEC they're mid. SEC's mid.
Yes.
Let's start with there's Missouri. Eli Drinkwitz, man, that's a really good win.
What a game!
Both love Kansas State. That was a super fun game to watch this weekend.
What a game!
I was getting ready to absolutely flame them. So when they were about to attempt a 56-yarder, and they had a delay a game that moved it back 60 yards. I'm like, are y'all serious? I didn't know if he was going to trot him out there. Now, I know Brady Cook does not have a great arm, but I was like, hey, are you going to have to Hail Mary it at this point and just maybe go to overtime? No, they sent their kicker out there for 61 yards.
Like, dude, when I tell you, I got so many flashbacks of the Alabama kick 6 against Auburn.
Kansas State sent somebody back there. Like, they sent somebody back there. I think that thing would have been good from like 65. Like, he nailed it. Like that was the kick of that guy's life. Yeah. Brady Cook played out of his mind.
He played well, dude. That was so fun to watch.
Is sick.
Like, Luther Burden is that guy. He's a dog.
Yeah, like I thought Missouri, like outside of Florida, who we've already talked about, Missouri had a very good weekend. They're 3-0. I'll say this, they need to be very careful Saturday. Like, I don't think they'll lose to Memphis. Memphis is a very good group of 5 team who might get that New Year's 6 bid this year. Just like I don't go into that game, off the high you just had beating Kansas State. Don't go into that game thinking that you got it won, because I'm telling you, just be careful. Look, I know Mississippi State's bad. I do think it was noteworthy LSU's offense playing like they did. Like Malik Neighbors, like he heard you. I texted you Saturday. He's been listening to the pod, and he got to come out and show out. I had like 13 catches for 200.
Yeah, he had 239.
Look, I want to see that against a good team, but
yes, where was that at against Florida freaking State? Where was that at?
They were dropping the ball all over the place. That big game from Jaden Daniels also. I still have concerns about LSU, but we'll see what they look like.
I think Mississippi State is just that bad, to be fair.
Yeah, they're the second worst team in the SEC. Vanderbilt's still the worst, but Mississippi State's bad.
Yes.
We'll check back in a couple weeks when LSU plays Ole Miss. That'll be to me their next biggest test because they're going to dog walk Arkansas. I think.
Yeah, it's going to be bad.
Texas A&M, Auburn, easy wins. UNLV beat Vandy. That's not good for Clark Lee. Look, that Vanderbilt's a very hard job. Man, being in your third year losing to UNLV, that's not great news.
That's embarrassing.
Kentucky.
Just for them to come back and beat Florida at the end of the year.
Yeah. I guess let's finish up talking Georgia. We've talked around it a little bit. They just the slow starts and just the disinterested look. Because I'm sort of chalking it up to we've won back-to-back national titles. We know we're 1,000 times better than anybody on our regular season schedule, and I think that's infinitely more true now that Tennessee looks like their schedule looks terrible right now. Like just with Tennessee looking that bad, I think the hardest game they may play all year maybe Ole Miss, I guess now, but that game's in Athens. But let's stick with the game that happened. Like I thought it was an excellent game plan by South Carolina. They knew they couldn't block Georgia. They knew their offense line's bad. Quick, get the ball out quick. Rattler had to run around a lot in the second half, especially once Georgia adjusted. One point I know I made in our SEC preview, Georgia has very good players on defense. I'm not saying Georgia is a bad defense or overrated. Do they have a dominant front seven player? I keep Michael Williams. I keep waiting for that. Like
I'm about to say, Michael Williams, but outside of that, I mean,
I didn't see any of that. They're very good, but I just Do they have Jalen Carter?
They don't have a Jalen Carter or Jordan Davis. I can tell you that now.
Their secondary, I think, is still pretty good, but it was kind of getting worked a little bit in the first half. Like all right, and I also make this like they made a point on the broadcast. Like it was that first touchdown South Carolina scored. They drove the ball down there. It was 3rd and goal or third and long or something.
Yeah,
you're 1,000 times better than South Carolina's offensive line. You could rush 4. Why they blitz like 8? Like why it's 3rd and long? What are you doing? Like I just didn't. Some of the offensive play calling, you talked about that. That was our biggest concern for them heading into the year. It still is. They play incredibly slow too. Like I don't love how slow Georgia plays on offense.
Yeah,
but again,
in my mind, I was sitting here thinking as I'm watching the game, I'm like, if they still had Stetson Bennett, does this game look like this? And then I thought a little deeper. I was like, no, if they had Todd Monken, this game wouldn't look like this. I think we really underrated Todd Monken.
I didn't. He is one of the best, and you're seeing it with the Ravens right now. He is a tremendous. He knows how to utilize his weapons. Yeah. I just don't think Mike Bobo knows how to do that. Like, yes, he throws screens and stuff to Brock Bowers, but he just doesn't. And again, Ladd McConkey is out. He is an important part of that offense. He's a good player,
but they still have much talent at the receiver position.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's just not inspiring right now. Like I would still,
but also there's no team on their schedule that can just take advantage of that. There's just not.
We'll see what kind of effort they come out with on the road against Auburn in a couple of weeks. Yeah, that's our because UAB they're like 40-point favorites over. Like it's God. Yeah, it just wasn't like I fully expected them to come out and unleash it this weekend and dominate that game because I was like. They sleptwalked through those two. South Carolina, they're not going to sleepwalk just because you asked Tennessee and Clemson how that went. Like, but still, that was not a great performance by Georgia, who's not like Georgia can win the national title. I would still probably pick them on a neutral field against anybody. That doesn't mean they've looked good. Like they haven't. So, but I guess that's going to wrap it up for this show today. We got a massive week 4 slate. Ohio State, Notre Dame, Florida State, Clemson, Ole Miss, Alabama. We got a couple of big Pac-12 clashes too. Oregon, Colorado, UCLA, and Utah. Like that one's flying under the radar. Oregon State, Washington State. That one's going to be really good. Just an incredible week of football ahead. We will be here to break it all down on the Goal Line Stand podcast. Like and subscribe. Like the video. Subscribe on YouTube. We would love it if you did that. If you're listening on podcast form, be sure to leave us a review. Let us know how we're doing. Kobe, you got anything else before we get out of here?
No, man, it's looking like a great start to the season. We still got a lot of questions about how this year is going to play out, but we got a big weekend of football ahead of us, so be sure to check back in on next week's episode as we recap this weekend. I got a feeling that we're going to have a lot to talk about.
Yep. Go check out allyellowjackets.com as always, but I'm Jackson Caudill. That is Kobe.